Hello everyone, today we are going to be doing some fall planting. I have 16 varieties of seeds with me. I already planted several varieties in an earlier video that I published, and if you are interested you can check it out. I'll link it in the description box below. Go ahead and watch it after this video. So today we are planting 16 varieties, as I said, and let's go ahead and start planting. One of the very most important things that I like to do when I'm planting something is make sure to amend the bed. So right here with me I have some chicken manure. This is chicken manure from our chickens. We know how they're fed. They are organic and all that stuff. So this is really good stuff over here, and it has been maturing the entire winter. This was taken out of the coop in the late spring, and it's been sitting in this wheelbarrow for a really long time, and I've been using it around the garden wherever I can and whenever I can. So I'm going to be planting in this bed right here behind me. I have some tomatoes in here. Those tomatoes actually seeded themselves and I just let them grow. This bed was full of compost also that I put in there, buried it in the ground, and it was also full of weeds, so I finally was able to clean it up, and now we get to plant it. First thing I'm going to do is amend this bed with the chicken manure, and then we are going to just fix the drip irrigation in here because I took it off because I wasn't using this bed, and then I will be sharing with you the things that I'm going to be planting for the fall in this bed. The first thing I'm going to start with is this bok choy, and this is Hidu tiny bok choy, and these grow to be super tiny, perfect for stir fry. You want to plant them about 3 inches apart and a 1/4 inch deep, and these are best sown in the late summer, early fall. I've tried for so many years growing bok choy and other types of Asian cabbage in the early spring, and that does not work at all, because for us what happens is in the spring we have cold temperatures early on, and then about 2 to 3 weeks later we get a heat wave in the middle of the spring and high temperatures, about 80 to 90 degree temperatures, and that causes anything that sprouted to bolt when it comes to all the Asian cabbage type plants. So I stopped planting them in the spring, and now I'm going to start planting them in the fall. This is actually the first year I'm starting to plant them in the fall. Last year I wanted to, just didn't get to it. So we're gonna do a few rows of this bok choy over here, and I'm gonna plant them pretty close together because, again, these are supposed to grow really small. Therefore stir fry. You want to harvest them pretty early on. I wonder though if you kind of just cut the top of the head off, kind of like lettuce, the cut and come again method, if they would grow back again. I'm going to try to do that because that seems to work out for a lot of the cabbage, the brassica family plants. They seem to produce lots of stuff after you cut the head off if you leave some of the leaves on. So I'm going to try that with these, and I'm going to plant maybe about 3 to 4 rows of this bok choy. So what I like to do is I'm going to put on my gloves first. I like to take a stick of some sort, or a little, even this thing right here works actually. This is probably better. And I like to create a trench along the ground all the way across where I'm going to lay my seed down. And I don't want the trench to be super deep, just deep enough for the seeds so that they can sprout, because if you bury your seeds too deep, there's a chance that they might not sprout at all. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do the same for the rest of the rows that I'm going to be planting. So, again, these are supposed to be planted super close together, so because of that, I'm going to make my rows really close together This will also help with the fumes from the chicken manure are killing me. This will also help with weed suppression. I like to plant my crops really close together for this reason, so that I don't end up with tons of weeds. And you saw my garden because I wasn't able to plant all the things in it or be around here and weed it. It ended up with tons and tons of weeds that grew gigantically. I actually love planting fall crops. I kind of almost prefer them over summer crops because you tend to have a lot less issues with them, because the cold weather tends to keep the insects at bay, so all the insects that tend to damage the crops are not usually there during the cold temperatures. When you plant in the spring and you go into the summer, your plants are a lot more likely to face a lot of these insects and diseases because of the varying temperatures. And the fall planting makes it really nice because there's a less chance of disease and insect damage. And also it's just really nice to go out there in your garden in the fall and find something in there growing that you can actually harvest. So looks like I don't have a lot of these seeds in here, so I'm going to be very careful on how I plant them. I'm going to take my gloves off and I'm going to place one seed every 3 inches. It looks like I don't have a lot of this, so we'll do our best. Today it feels like it's in the 80s, but it's going down into the 50s and 60s at night, and that's going to give these plants a break, and hopefully we won't be having much hot temperatures any longer. We might have a couple weeks of those, but that will help the plants to germinate, and after that they'll get a break from the hot weather. One good thing about growing your plants in the spring is that you can collect seeds from them, because they will bolt, because the temperatures are varying, and the change of temperatures from cold to hot and hot to cold will cause the plants to bolt, meaning that they will set seed, and the fact that they will set seed will allow you to harvest their seeds and save them for the coming 2 years, so that you will have seeds to plant, and you'll have plenty of that because they produce tons of seeds. I have no idea what you guys are seeing and what you are not seeing, so I'm hoping that you are actually able to see properly. I think I can get a glimpse of it. Am I even recording? Yeah. The next crop that I'm going to plant is this winter choy. Now, I purposefully left these rows open, meaning I did not go back and cover them with some soil, because I wanted to make sure that I'm not going to plant over them as I am planting, because I'm going to plant several rows. This is again another variety of bok choy. This is winter choy, Chinese yellow heart. This variety can even tolerate some yellow, some light snow, not yellow snow. We don't want that. And you want to plant them also about a 1/4 inch deep, and they grow about 5 to 8 inches tall. So that's also super small, and also great for stir fries. You can chop them up and just a little bit, and they're going to be perfect. But these also look very beautiful. You can also use them in kind of winter arrangements in your pots, in your flower pots. I should have thought about that. Maybe I need to clear one of my pots and start planting some seeds in there, or a few of my pots, and plant some fall crops in there that will look beautiful. and maybe some flowers, not just crops, but flowers and, and crops together. So to also stop these things from bolting during this kind of off weather, when you are having some hot weather and cold weather, you want to make sure to provide them with plenty of water, and if possible you can choose to cover them with a light shade cloth just to protect them from the hot weather during these hot days. Like for example, we are having about an 80-degree day or so today, so with having temperatures that are fluctuating between the 50s and the 80s, that can cause things to bolt. But I just wanted to make sure that these seeds will germinate. So it might take them 3 days to germinate, it might take them a week or 2 to germinate. I didn't want to chance it. I thought if I start them now, it's going to be better. So again, these are going to grow about 5 to 8 inches tall, and they're going to be tender as long as you provide them with plenty of water. If you receive lots of rain in your area, that shouldn't be a problem. And if you don't receive lots of rain, you can learn how to set up irrigation in your raised beds. I have plenty of videos on that. I'll link them in the description box below so that you guys can go ahead and check them out. So anyways, so I'm going to be planting them also 6 to 8 inches apart because they grow about 5 to 8 inches tall. Also, the spread is going to be about 5 to 6 inches wide. I'm also going to be planting them about 6 to 8 inches apart. I prefer to plant them closer again, so we'll be planting them at the 6 inches apart. If I spread out my hand like so, that's close enough to 6 inches, so, or around there. So that's how I kind of guesstimate my sizing. And I don't use measuring tools. If you are new to gardening, they have these little square thingies, I don't even know what their name is, that allows you to plant the seeds apart at the proper distance from each other. I don't personally do that. I've never done it myself, but I've seen people use it. If you want to use it, you can get yourself one of those things. If I can find a link for it, I'll link it in the description box below if you guys are interested in that type of things. Anyways, so I'm going to plant about 3 rows of this winter choy. The next crop we are going to plant is this Napa cabbage, or Chinese cabbage Hilton. And you want to plant these about 15 inches apart from each other, 1/4 inch deep. And these also, again, prefer to be planted in the late summer, early fall, for the same reasons I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to plant about 2 rows of this cabbage over here. And this cabbage is wonderful for kimchi and for a lot of Korean dishes. So can't wait to grow some of this. The next crops we are going to plant are a variety of different radishes, turnips, and beets. The first type of radish I have over here is the early scarlet glow, and the next one is the Japanese Minowa's daikon. If you are growing the Napa cabbage to make kimchi, you want to grow the daikon with it so that you can make the kimchi properly. The next radish is the French breakfast radish. And then we move on to some turnips. We have the Tokinashi turnip and the Nagasaki Akari Kabu turnip. That's a mouthful. So these are the varieties of turnips, and just the Detroit dark red beet. I actually prefer the Heaven Harvest variety for the turnips, but it's not with me right now, so I'm just going to plant what I was able to put my hands on. And anyways, I don't think I tried any of these turnip varieties, so I bought the seeds, but it looks like I did plant some of them. I guess I'm wrong. This one, however, when I planted it, it was had a lot of worm damage. So we'll see if it will succeed next year, this season or not. The variety that I like to plant doesn't have any issues with worms. I always get beautiful, perfect turnips, and these new varieties don't seem to do very well. So we'll see. Maybe it's also because we bought some new soil last year, and this soil probably has a lot of worms in it and things, insects that feed on the vegetation and the roots. So we're going to be planting a row of each type of radish, and if I have space I would like to plant 2 rows of each of the kinds of turnips and 1 row of the beets. So I like to plant them pretty close together actually. I don't follow the spacing at all, and then as they are growing I thin them by just harvesting them. And when they are growing, if you have 2 turnips growing up against each other or 2 radishes, if the seeds are growing in the same place, what they do is they kind of push away from each other and they grow perfect turnips or radishes, and they grow huge sizes by just being close together, as long as they have enough space, of course, around them to grow to that space. This is why I just thin them as I come here. I harvest and I thin that way. This way I end up with tons of turnips as they are maturing. And the daikon radish, however, I've never succeeded in growing it because I was always growing it in the spring, and this is one of the varieties you want to grow in the late summer, early fall, because it will bolt. As soon as any form of heat comes, this thing will definitely bolt. So this is why I'm doing a fall crop of this daikon radish, so that hopefully we can get some daikon radish this time. So let's go ahead and get these things in the ground. So this bed behind me is now fully planted. All I have to do now is just cover the seeds. There's water coming to it, so I don't have to worry about watering it because the irrigation over there is working. And I also did not mention how far apart to plant the turnips and the beets and the radishes. So for the radishes, you want to plant them about 2 inches apart from each other, 1 to 2 inches apart. For the turnips and the beets, you want to plant them about 4 inches apart. I don't follow those, but you can if you want to. I kind of plant them about 3 inches apart, sometimes a little closer, and then I come and thin them. So you can do that also, but if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can plant them 4 inches apart, and then you'll end up with big turnips. And for the radishes, oh boy, that's taking a while. And for the radishes, what most people like to do is to plant them, kind of stagger plant them, or succession plant them. So you might plant a couple rows this week, and then about a week or 2 later you come and plant 2 more rows. And if you like radishes, you can do that. We do like radishes, but not in that quantity. If I want more later on, I can always plant more. Maybe about, I don't know, if we end up harvesting them, by the time we end up harvesting them, I don't think I'd want more radishes. Because, I mean, I don't like them pickled. I don't like them pickled and canned. I don't like them fermented. So I like to eat them fresh, and there's only so much radishes you can eat fresh. So I just like to have a little bit of radishes. Anyways, so let me cover that up, and then I'm gonna work on this bed over here, and I'll show you what I'm going to be planting in this bed that's next to me. Right here in this bed is going to be my leafy green bed, and I already planted a row of sugar snap peas, and those sugar snap peas were the peas that kind of were growing on the trellis before in the spring. And what happened is we got a lot of rain, so I wasn't able to harvest the seeds, and the seeds were already starting to sprout. So I took the seeds, I put them in the ground, and it looks like I have some holes in there that some seeds did not sprout, or maybe if they were going to sprout, they didn't sprout yet. So I'm not going to chance it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reseed that area in the spots that I don't see any germination with some more of the sugar and sugar snap peas. And sugar snap peas, snow peas, and all these things are a wonderful crop to plant in the fall for a fall crop because they love the cool weather. They don't like it to get hot at all. Some varieties tolerate the heat better than others, but this variety, especially the sugar and sugar snap peas, which is our favorite variety, does not like the heat at all. Once the heat hits, it kind of starts to wither and the production slows down drastically and the plants start to crisp. Anyways, so that's one thing. The other varieties that I'm going to be planting in this bed are cilantro, Mizuna Benhushi. I've wanted to plant this last year, but I did not plant it. So I'm going to try it out this year. A lettuce mix. This is from Johnny's Seeds All-Star Gourmet Lettuce Mix. We'll try this out. I don't think I even opened this package yet. Some romaine lettuce and May Queen lettuce. I love this lettuce. It's really wonderful. And some arugula. And one more beet crop, not beet crop, sorry. One more root crop that I did not have the space to plant in the other bed, and that is the rutabaga. This is the Navon yellow rutabaga. Rutabagas are kind of sweet, they're crunchy, they're delicious, but I don't like to plant tons of them, so we'll see. Maybe I'll do maybe one row or half a row. We'll see how that's going to work out, because even though they are really good, we don't eat tons of them. So when I want to plant something for us in the garden, I want to make sure to plant things that we're going to eat. And if we don't eat tons of it, I'm not going to be planting tons of that crops. So when you are planting in your garden, if you are planting for food, you want to make sure to plant varieties that you are going to enjoy and things that you are actually going to, if you are not going to eat a lot of that thing, you might want to kind of reduce that quantity and plant more of the things that you want to eat more of. So I want to, we will be most likely eating a lot of the sugar and sugar snap peas, so I'm going to be planting 2 rows up against each other. I want to free up another bed for them. Right now I have lots of things that I need to harvest. I'll be making a harvest, so I'll show you all the things that I'm going to be harvesting in another video. Tons of stuff that need to be harvested in this vegetable garden over here. I haven't been able to harvest for a long time, and I really need to get out here and harvest. Anyways, I forgot what I was saying. So yes, the sugar and sugar snap peas, I'll be making another bed for that. Not right now though. And the lettuce, I'm probably going to plant a row of each of the lettuces, and if I have some space, I might plant a couple rows of arugula and a couple rows of cilantro and maybe half a row of the rutabagas, or 1 row. We'll see how much space I have. So let me tell you how far apart to plant these things. Also, you want to, before I proceed to that, you want to make sure to plant the tall things in the back. So this is a south facing bed. The sun rises on this side of me and sets on that side, so I want to make sure that this side over here in the front is going to receive all the sun. So I don't want to plant something that will block it. So I will be planting the tall plants in the back and the shorter plants in the front. This way the plants can receive the amount of energy from the sunlight that they need. So even though the rutabaga is a root crop, it is going to grow some leafy growth, so to put on some leafy growth, and that leafy growth is going to gather energy from the sun. It's going to photosynthesize, and that's going to convert into starch and go into growing the root. So because of all this leafy growth, that is going to be maybe a little bit taller than some of the varieties of the lettuce that we are going to be growing. So the rutabaga is going to go in front of the lettuce. The cilantro is going to go right behind the, or I should say in front of the, so we're going to have, let me trace back over here. We're going to have a row of sugar and sugar snap peas, then the cilantro, then the rutabaga, then the lettuce mixes and different varieties of lettuce, then the arugula, and I think that's all of them. So now let me tell you how far apart to plant each variety. So for the arugula, it depends on how you like to harvest it. You can plant them as close as you want. If you want to harvest like the baby arugula, if you want the bigger leaves, you might want to plant them far apart from each other. And lots of dragonflies in here. So this packet doesn't actually tell you how far apart to plant them from each other. But I would say, according to the size of this plant, you might want to plant them, if you want them to kind of grow for big leaves, you might want to plant them about 4 to 6 inches apart from each other. But for the small leaves, which most people like, the baby leaves, you want to plant them really close together and kind of come and cut the arugula at the base level and then let it grow flush again with growth and then harvest again. This is how you kind of grow arugula. On this packet it says the arugula, this type of arugula over here, can tolerate cold weather, and it might come back in the next season for you if you live in a kind of mild climate. For us, it probably won't come back. That's a beautiful yellow finch over here. But it might seed itself if it bolts. So if it gets too hot and it bolts, then we'll end up with lots of arugula next spring, which I don't mind. I love arugula. And the rutabagas, you want to sow them. Oh, the arugula you want to sow it about at an eighth inch depth. For the rutabagas, you want to sow them about a 1/4 inch depth, and you want to plant them about 6 to 8 inches apart because they grow kind of big, giant roots. So if you want them to grow kind of to the full mature size, you want to grow them far apart from each other. If you want smaller rutabagas, you want to grow them closer together. And that goes for all the root crops. If you want your root crops to grow to their maximum potential, you want to separate them from each other. Actually, speaking of that, one year I planted a whole bunch of turnips, and so many of my turnips ended up as big as my head, if not even bigger. I have a picture. If I can find it, I'll flash it on the screen. But it was amazing. And that year, I think I barely used any fertilizer. All I used is just the in-place compost method and the chicken manure from our chickens. That's all I gave them, and just the least amount of fertilizer you can imagine. I just sprinkled a little bit around each plant, and that was it. So all they had is just from the chicken manure and from the compost that I put in there, that just kitchen scraps that I threw in the bed and I put in the dirt, and that was all. So anyways, let's move on to the other varieties that you might want to grow. Cilantro, these are seeds that I harvested several years ago from one of our plants, or several of our plants. So I have lots of cilantro seeds, and hopefully they will germinate because I haven't planted any of them for the past few years. And these, you want to grow them up, let's say about 8 inches apart from each other, something like that. If you want to harvest them while they're young, you can plant them a lot closer together. If you want like the tender leaves. I mean, cilantro in general grows tender leaves as long as you are watering it. I also like to use the stems, and if it's receiving ample water, it should grow tender stems and tender leaves. For the lettuce mix, this, you might want to plant them close together so that you can kind of have baby leaves. So you just kind of sprinkle the seeds along the ground. The cilantro, you might want to plant them about a 1/4 inch depth or so. And the lettuce mix, you want to plant them about eighth of an inch depth. And it says here to plant them in bands. So the seeds are going to be ½ inch apart, and the bands are going to be 2 to 4 inches apart from each other, according to this seed packet. Will I follow it? We'll see. I don't know. I'm just going to sprinkle the seeds and harvest them that way. For the romaine lettuce, you want to plant them about 6 to 8 inches apart from each other, also at 1/8 of an inch depth. And the May Queen lettuce, if you want to grow heads, you want to grow them about 6 to 8 inches apart if you want to grow big heads. And if you want to harvest them as baby lettuce, you want to grow them, you want to sprinkle the seeds pretty close together, about ½ inch apart from each other. And the Mizuna Binhushi, this looks like a lot like the dandelions, but it's supposed to have a sweeter flavor. And you want to plant them about 8 inches apart from each other. So I'm going to create the rows and just start planting everything because I'm running out of time. Zuni Binhushi and Rutabaga, romaine, May Queen, lettuce mix, and arugula. So I'm only ending up with just 1 row of arugula and 1 row of the lettuce mix. But that's okay. Better than nothing. I still have lots of beds that I can plant in. Since the cilantro seeds are so old, I'm going to sow them very thickly, and if a lot of them germinate, that's okay. I'll just kind of use them as if I was using the lettuce mix. That's totally fine by me. I want to be able to freeze dry a whole bunch of them for the winter because it makes it super simple to just add them into all the different types of food that we use them in. I love to freeze dry food because it makes it super simple to preserve the harvest. It also shrinks the space that the harvest would take because it is getting freeze dried, and like for the cilantro, for example, I could crush it and then store it into jars or into Mylar bags. If I were to store it in the freezer, I'm going to have to put it in some oil or something like that to preserve it that way, and that ends up taking a lot of space in the freezer. I would rather have my freezer free of most of the produce. I will be putting some produce in the freezer, but for most of the produce I'm going to be either freeze drying it or storing it as it is for things like potatoes and onions. And while we're at it, I wanted to give you a quick update on all the plants that we have planted a couple weeks ago and how they're doing. So these are the beans and they are looking amazing. There are a few blemishes on their leaves, but I'm not sure exactly what happened here, maybe some weather or something. But overall, they're doing amazing. Look at their gigantic leaves over here. And this is all due to the chicken manure and all the organic fertilizer that was present in this bed when I amended the garlic, because I also amended it halfway through the season. In this bed over here, I have some weeds that I need to pull, but also, if you look closely, you can see the carrots are sprouting and they're everywhere. So I'm super excited about that. We can come here and pull some of these weeds. Those are easy to pull while they're small. That's what I like to do. And when I don't get to it, it becomes a jungle. So I try to do it as often as I can, but I don't always get to it because I have a 3-year-old that's super attached to me. In this bed over here, this is where we planted kind of the formal garden style bed with all the kale and the Swiss chard and all that. And let me bring you closer. Over here we have some sort of squash growing, but we also have all the different types of kale are starting to sprout. I feel like I have to reseed some of the ones over here, or maybe just take some of these ones over here. Maybe that's what I'll do. So I'm gonna dig this one up out of here. These are, whoops, too close together. And maybe I'll plant one over here. And looks like one over here. And I'm gonna dig one of these up over here, plant it in the middle between them. Just like so. And lots of Swiss chard. I'm just gonna leave them for now, see which ones are gonna do better, and then I'll thin them. Also the kale that I planted in the middle, the Russian kale, it looks like it's already starting. There are a few spots that I need to reseed, but if you look closely, you can see they're growing. And lots of weeds. There are tomatoes that seeded themselves in here, so I have to weed all these beds. But this is doing good. And then over here the nasturtiums are also half sprouted, or not are half sprouted already. And this is where I planted the parsley, and I think I'm seeing some parsley. It's so hard to tell at this stage, but this looks like parsley over here, and this does not. So lots of weeds everywhere, but the plants are starting to sprout. These are all the varieties that we are planting for the fall planting. I hope you guys learned something new. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you are new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell to receive notifications of whenever I upload new videos. I make lots of gardening videos, growing food and growing flowers and all sorts of things, and also food preservation and some other types of videos occasionally. So if you are interested in these types of videos, go ahead and click that subscribe button. And I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Bye.